Today, we're diving deep into a topic that has stirred emotions and sparked discussions across the country: police scandals that have shocked the nation. These incidents not only capture headlines but also raise significant questions about the ethics, accountability, and effectiveness of law enforcement in our society. From high-profile corruption cases to tragic incidents of excessive force, these events have profoundly impacted public trust in the police and have led to widespread calls for reform. Let's explore some of the most shocking police scandals in U.S. history and examine their repercussions. The Rampart Scandal, 1990s. One of the most infamous scandals occurred in the late 1990s in Los Angeles, known as the Rampart Scandal. The Rampart Division of the LAPD became infamous for widespread corruption and misconduct among its officers. A special unit within the division, tasked with combating gang violence, instead engaged in brutal tactics, including drug dealing, planting evidence, and engaging in excessive force. The investigation began when allegations surfaced regarding a series of wrongful arrests and excessive force complaints. As inquiries deepened, it became evident that this was not just isolated incidents but rather a pattern of behavior within the division. The fallout was catastrophic. Dozens of officers were implicated, leading to numerous convictions being overturned, and the LAPD faced immense public scrutiny. The Rampart scandal sparked protests, legal actions, and a significant demand for reform. It also highlighted the urgent need for better oversight and accountability within police departments. The consequences were far-reaching, reshaping public perception of the LAPD and prompting discussions about police ethics across the nation. The Chicago police torture scandal, 1970s-1990s. Another shocking scandal that rocked the nation involved the Chicago Police Department, particularly centered around former Detective John Berg. For over 2 decades, Berg and his colleagues were accused of torturing suspects to extract confessions, using methods like electric shocks and suffocation. This brutal practice was hidden in plain sight, with many victims, predominantly from marginalized communities, left without justice. The revelations about Berg's actions came to light in the 1990s, leading to public outrage and a series of investigations. The impact of this scandal was profound, with many wrongful convictions being uncovered. The cases of those who were tortured by police highlighted systemic issues within law enforcement, including a culture of impunity and a lack of accountability. In 2010, Berg was convicted of lying about the torture allegations, but the damage had already been done. The scandal not only resulted in a significant number of exonerations but also led to calls for comprehensive police reforms. The Berg scandal served as a powerful reminder of the pervasive issues of police brutality and the urgent need for systemic change in law enforcement practices. The Ferguson unrest, 2014. Fast forward to 2014, when the shooting of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, by Officer Darren Wilson ignited a national movement against police violence and systemic racism. The incident sparked protests that spread across the country, highlighting deep-seated issues of racial discrimination within law enforcement. The aftermath of Brown's death saw an unprecedented response from both the community and the media. The Ferguson Police Department's militarized response to peaceful protests further fueled public outrage. The Department of Justice launched an investigation into the practices of the Ferguson Police Department, uncovering a pattern of racial bias and excessive force. The scandal not only exposed systemic problems within law enforcement but also led to the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement, advocating for social justice and police reform. The events in Ferguson prompted broader discussions about race, policing, and the need for accountability in law enforcement. The implications of this scandal continue to resonate today, as communities across the nation demand change and justice. The George Floyd incident, 2020. In May 2020, the world was again shaken by a shocking police scandal that transcended borders: the murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. The graphic video of Floyd's death, where Chauvin knelt on Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, ignited protests across the globe, sparking a renewed call for justice and police reform. The response to Floyd's death was immediate and powerful. Protests erupted in cities from coast to coast, and even internationally, as people demanded an end to police violence and systemic racism. The outrage was palpable, leading to discussions about police funding, accountability, and the overall mission of law enforcement. Chauvin was ultimately convicted of murder, but the incident had far-reaching consequences beyond the courtroom. It reignited discussions about the Black Lives Matter movement and led to increased scrutiny of police practices across the nation. Many jurisdictions began re-evaluating their policing strategies, exploring alternatives to traditional law enforcement, and addressing issues of systemic racism. The Uvalde school shooting response, 2022, tragedy struck again in 2022 with the mass shooting at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. As an armed gunman opened fire, law enforcement's delayed response raised serious questions and sparked outrage among families and the public. Eyewitness accounts described chaos as officers waited outside the classroom for over an hour while children were still inside, leading to criticism and demands for accountability. Investigations revealed lapses in communication, coordination, and decision-making among law enforcement agencies present at the scene. Families of the victims were understandably furious, demanding answers and accountability for the police's inaction during a crisis. The Uvalde incident prompted significant discussions about police preparedness and the need for better training and protocols in active shooter situations. The fallout led to hearings and investigations aimed at ensuring that such failures would not happen again. This tragedy highlighted the urgent need for reform in how law enforcement responds to threats, especially in schools where children should feel safe. The NYPD's stop and frisk policy for years, New York City's stop and frisk policy was a source of intense controversy and scandal. Implemented as a crime reduction strategy, the policy allowed officers to stop and search individuals based on reasonable suspicion. However, the practice disproportionately targeted communities of color, leading to accusations of racial profiling and civil rights violations. The outcry against stop and frisk grew louder, culminating in a 2013 federal ruling that deemed the NYPD's implementation of the policy unconstitutional. The judge's decision underscored the systemic issues within the department and the need for reform. The backlash against stop and frisk prompted a re-evaluation of policing strategies in New York City and beyond. Advocates for change argued that policing should focus on building trust within communities rather than instilling fear. This scandal served as a critical turning point in the national conversation about policing, accountability, and civil rights. Conclusion: these scandals have not only shocked the nation but have also shaped public perception and led to significant discussions about the future of law enforcement in America. Each incident serves as a reminder of the urgent need for accountability, transparency, and systemic reform within police departments. As we reflect on these events, it's crucial to recognize that the fight for justice and equality is ongoing. Communities across the nation are calling for change, advocating for policies that prioritize safety and justice for all individuals. By addressing these issues head-on and fostering dialogue between law enforcement and the communities they serve, we can work towards a future where policing is rooted in accountability, respect, and justice. Thank you for joining me in this important discussion. Let's continue to advocate for a better, more equitable society where every individual is treated with dignity and respect.